Part 2. In piecing together memory, Loftus concluded that hints leaked to us by fellow humans override the scene we're sure we've seen with our own eyes. Though it got little public attention, research on the slavish nature, or is that slavish? Research on the slavish nature of perception had begun at least 20 years before Loftus's work. It was 1956 when Solomon Asch published a classic series of experiments in which he and his colleagues showed cards with lines of different lengths to clusters of their students. 2 lines were exactly the same size and 2 were clearly not. The dissimilar lines stuck out like a pair of basketball players at a Brotherhood of Munchkins brunch. During a typical experimental run, the researchers asked 9 volunteers to claim that 2 badly mismatched lines were actually the same, and that the real twin was a misfit. Now came the nefarious part. The researchers ushered a naive student into a room filled with the collaborators and gave him the impression that the crowd already there knew just as little as he did about what was going on. Then a white-coated psychologist passed the cards around. One by one, he asked the pre-drilled shills to announce out loud which lines were alike. Each dutifully declared that 2 terribly unlike lines were duplicates. By the time the scientist prodded the unsuspecting newcomer to pronounce judgment, he usually went along with the bogus consensus of the crowd. In fact, a full 75% of the clueless experimental subjects bleated in chorus with the herd. Asch ran the experiment over and over again. When he quizzed his victims of peer pressure after their ordeal was over, it turned out that many had done far more than simply going along to get along. They had actually seen the mismatched lines as equal. Their senses had been swayed more by the views of the multitude than by the actuality. To make matters worse, many of those whose vision hadn't been deceived had still become inadvertent collaborators in the praise of the emperor's new clothes. Some did it out of self-doubt. They were convinced that the facts their eyes reported were wrong. The herd was right, and that an optical illusion had tricked them into seeing things. Still others realized with total clarity which lines were identical, but lacked the nerve to utter an unpopular opinion. Conformity enforcers had tyrannized everything from visual processing to honest speech, revealing some of the mechanisms which wrap and seal a crowd into a false belief. Another series of experiments indicates just how deeply social suggestion can penetrate the neural mesh through which we think we see a hard and fast reality. Students with normal color vision were shown blue slides, but one or two stooges in the room declared the slides were green. In a typical use of this procedure, only 32% of the students ended up going along with the vocal, but totally phony proponents of green vision. Only 32% of the students ended up going along with the vocal but totally phony proponents of the green vision. Later, however, the subjects were taken aside, shown blue-green slides, and asked to rate them for blueness or greenness. Even the students who had refused to see green where there was none a few minutes earlier showed that the insistent greenies in the room had colored their perceptions. They rated the news slides more green than pre-tests indicated they would have otherwise. More to the point, when asked to describe the color of the after image they saw, the subjects often reported it was red-purple, the hue of an after image left by the color green. After image are not voluntary. They are manufactured by the visual system. The words of just one determined speaker had penetrated the most intimate sanctums of the eye and brain. Let me read that last sentence again. The words of just one determined speaker had penetrated the most intimate sanctums of the eye and brain. When it comes to herd perception, this is just the iceberg's tip. Social experience literally shapes critical details of brain physiology, sculpting an infant's brain to fit the culture into which the child is born. 6-month-olds can hear or make every sound in virtually every human language. But within a mere 4 months, nearly 2/3 of this capacity has been cut away. The slashing of ability is accompanied by ruthless alterations in cerebral tissue. Brain cells remain alive only if they can prove their worth in dealing with the baby's physical and social surroundings. Half the brain cells we are born with rapidly die. The 50% of neurons which thrive are those which have shown they come in handy for coping with such cultural experiences as crawling on the polished mud floor of a straw hut or navigating on all fours across wall-to-wall carpeting. Of comprehending a mother's words, her body language, stories, songs, and the concepts she's imbibed, or is that imbibed, from her community. Those nerve cells stay alive, which demonstrate that they can cope with the quirks of strangers, friends, and family. The 50% of neurons which remain unused are literally forced to commit pre-programmed cell death suicide. What? Let me read that again. The 50% of neurons which remain unused are literally forced to commit pre-programmed cell death suicide. The brain, which underlies the mind, is jigsawed like a puzzle piece to fit the space it's given by its loved ones and by the larger framework of its culture's patterning.